Hello, everyone. Good night. Thank you for your patience. Hello to our presenter. Thanks for coming in. We are excited and elated to give you an amazing presentation today. Before we start, we'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement, as well as some updates about our program that we wanted to share with everyone. And this is supposed to be a fun, interactive night, present you with a lot of information. So grab your tea, grab your snacks for the evening, as well as any questions that you may have. Feel free to use our chat function or question and answer, and we'll be happy to respond to your questions throughout the training. And today, again, we are Kajenga Wellness Project, proudly serving within Durham region. Before we start, I'd like to give a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land of the peoples of the Mississauga, Asquegalk Island First Nation. We are thankful to be welcomed on these lands in friendship. The lands that we are situated on are covered under the Williams Treaty and the traditional territory of the Mississauga, a branch of the Greater Anishinaabe Nation, including Algonquin, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. These lands remain home to a number of Indigenous nations and people, and we acknowledge this land out of respect for the Indigenous nations who have cared for Turtle Island, also called North America, from before the arrival of the settler peoples until this day. Most importantly, we remember the history of these lands have been tainted by poor treatment, a lack of friendship with the First Nations who call them home, and this is something that we're all affected by, as we're all treaty people. In Canada, we all have a shared history to reflect on, and each of us is affected by this history in different ways. Our past defines our present, but if we move forward as friends and allies, that it does not have to define our future. And I'd like to encourage you to take some time to learn more about Indigenous history as and experiences, and become an ally as we have at Kajenga Wellness Project. We'd also like to highlight the importance of our community and our experiences of anti-Black racism. We know that anti-Black racism has negatively impacted the outcomes for many people within our community, from the time that they are babies to today as elders. We know that anti-Black racism is defined as the stereotypes, discrimination, aggression, policies, practices, attitudes, beliefs, prejudices, and experiences that are particular against the Black community. And we know that it shows up or it impacts our community in multiple ways through the healthcare system, education, policing system, child welfare, and many other systems where Black people are disproportionately represented, as well as experience disparities. We know that Black Canadians have contributed to the very fabric of our nation without compensation. And we know that these experiences have further not been acknowledged or recognized within Canada as it should. Kajenga Wellness Project is proudly funded by the Ontario Chilean Foundation on a Family Innovation Stream grant. We are heading into our second year of this program, and we've been very grateful to be able to provide services within Durham region and beyond. We also work closely with the Carrier Community Health Center, who also plays an integral part in the work that we do. Our focus within Kajenga Wellness Project is really to address systemic racism, to support our families, to address social isolation and mental health, which are other issues that occur because of the experiences of anti-Black racism. And we want to be able to provide information and resources that parents and families can access at their disposal. So please check out our website at kajengafamily.org, and we'll put that in the chat as well if you're ever looking for information, as well as feel free to give us a contact. We are proud to announce that we started a brand new service called the Family Support Line, Kajali. Kajali is a word that means caring, and our caring support line is there for individuals, for caregivers, parents, and guardians who are just needing some support. We provide access to resources and giving you information that might be beneficial. We also are able to provide informal counseling and peer-to-peer mentoring. So if you're ever interested in support or just wanted to know a little bit more about us, please absolutely reach out to connect with us. Our goals in terms of the new Kajali family support line is really to focus on how do we reduce isolation within our community and build connections that can help build and enhance our community. We want to be able to continue to promote equity in areas that you interact with the most, whether it's your child's school or the criminal justice system or child welfare. We want to be able to help you and support you through that experiences, as well as we also want to heal our community through addressing the trauma that we've experienced, but also continuing to provide information and support groups that address your concerns. So today is one of our many different series that we've been running since September. This one is called Building Generational Wealth series, and we're very proud to have our speaker here today, as well as Jasmine's going to introduce what we'll be doing for the evening.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to have you here tonight. Thank you for taking time out of your busy evening to celebrate with us all of our discussion on financial empowerment. We have an interesting discussion lined up for on financial literacy and investment alternatives. We have two presenters today, but I will start by introducing Beverly Brown, a renowned author and real estate expert. While she can't be here with us tonight, we are honored to share with you her upcoming book and a short video that she sent to us tonight. So I will hand that over to Nicole so she can share that with everyone.
Sorry, Jasmine, did you want to do an introduction for Miss Brown before we start? I just have to pull it up.
Yes, so I'm sorry. Beverly Brown, as I said, she is a renowned author and real estate expert. I'll give a bit of information on her book, How to Buy Tax Sale Properties, a Canadian Guide. So written in simple language, the book, How to Buy Tax Sale Properties, a Canadian Guide, is a quick and easy read. It offers a lot of helpful ideas on sales and buying sales properties across Canada. And in the book, she goes into detail about all the intricacies of buying properties across Canada. And she really puts this detail in her video, which we are hoping to get out for you very shortly. But as I said before, she couldn't be here tonight, but she is really excited to share all the information that she has through her video, as well as the information on the book that we hope to have for you shortly as well. And I'm sorry, Nicole, if you enable screen sharing, I should be able to share it as well.
Welcome to this unique information session. I have a glare, I'll take my glasses off. I'm Beverly Brown, freelance writer, editor, researcher, and creator of a unique system that teaches people how to acquire affordable land from local governments in Ontario. We don't say cheap. I'm also the owner of a website called buylandtoprofit.com, and that's exactly as it sounds, BUY land TO profit for money, buylandtoprofit.com. I'm also author of the book How to Buy Tax Sale Properties, a Canadian Guide. Although the subject covered is about how local governments sell land for property taxes, sorry, my computer is acting up a little bit. Tax sale is really too confusing, so we simplify it to affordable land from local governments. So why am I here? I'm here to share with you that you can do the same if you're prepared to invest in yourself, if you can be patient and aren't looking for a get-rich-quick scheme. No get-rich-quick schemes here. I'm already doing this for myself, but being an advocate, always on the side of the underdog and low-income people, I wanted to share, or rather I should say people with low incomes, I apologize for that. I wanted to share this knowledge so that they could improve their earnings or start a part-time business. Like, for example, a land contract business, and you learn more about that if you continue on. People with higher incomes, of course, can do this, but my focus was always on people who felt owning real estate was difficult for them. I started actively acquiring such real estate, affordable and alternative real estate, since about 2006. But it took me probably 4 years of patiently waiting and strategically studying the system, which most everyday people like me didn't know about. But I would tell people once I learned, because I was so fascinated that we, ordinary people, could acquire real estate at low prices if they were prepared to study, do due diligence, then practice. And by the way, I should tell you, I actually learned about this more than 30 years ago as a researcher for a newspaper. But I did nothing. I just kept it in my head and I would share the information with people. Now, you can do most of this from your own home, in the comfort of your home, with your computer. You will be more engaged if you go visit the property you're looking for, though that's not essential, especially once you become experienced. But trust me, everyone will tell you, everyone who has knowledge of this, they'll tell you it's best to see the property, and that is true. Now let me introduce one of my valid team members and marketing director. I'm going to leave you, and Leong Francis is going to take over and tell you more about the course, actually the system, because you're not doing the course. There is a course available if you'd like it. So she's going to tell you more. She's going to answer your questions, and my hope for you is that you will learn and you absorb and see the value of acquiring low-cost real estate for yourself from local governments. So over to Michelle.
Yes. Beverly got the intro. Oh, I'm so sorry, Nicole. Were you going to say something?
That was amazing. Thank you so much for showing the video. Before we bring out Miss Francis, I'd like to, do a proper introduction. So go ahead, Jasmine, in terms of introducing her to our platform.
Yes, I'm very excited to do so. I've had a chance to meet with Michelle previously, and I know she has some exciting content up for you guys tonight. So as a former business development leader for RBC, Michelle Francis is taking the finance world by storm. Michelle is the first Black female facilitator in the Humber College New Real Estate Salesperson Program and a recipient of the Top 100 Women to Watch For in 2020. She's also a celebrated community leader. Michelle also launched a local initiative of youth in trades called Leon, L-E-O-N, and through her nonprofit initiative, she aims to support youth through initiatives supporting their financial health and employment development. Finally, she is a proud inaugural member of Pickering's Anti-Black Racism Task Force. So without further ado, Michelle, I'm so happy to give it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much. And such a wonderful and warm welcome and introduction. And it's so lovely, although Bev is not here, to be able to, of course, see her speaking about her passion piece, which is helping people to become financially successful. So as I'm speaking right now, I've sent a presentation for Jasmine to queue up and move through for me, so I hope that's okay. But I do want to give you a quick highlight. I have to apologize. There were some technical issues before I came on today, so please bear with me, but I'm here to answer your questions, and I want this to be a very dynamic engagement. So I'll give you a bit of background about myself and Bev. Bev and I met actually maybe about 5 years ago, and we both had a passion for financial literacy and empowerment, but we came from two very different worlds. Bev has had a world in literature, writing for a number of magazines, and of course her own book. And my area of interest was very much on the corporate side, working for financial companies, directly involved and licensed in many of those industries. So we've had two very different worlds, but where we came together in collaboration was our love for wanting to assist and seeing how we can elevate people's knowledge. So in that, what to do together is collectively merge our knowledge base with regards to this presentation that we'd like to share with you. It is very elementary in its presentation. However, it's just to stir your ideas and to get you to think a little bit of a different way about building generational wealth. So I just want to do a quick check-in and see if Jasmine is ready for the presentation. And if she is, then we'll start with that. And if she has not, then
Yes.
I'll continue.
I'm sorry. Yes, we are good to go.
Great, fantastic. So what you're seeing in front of you, of course, is how you got here. So the advertisement for Kajenga, this particular project, and what we're focusing on here is generational wealth. You know, some people may be saying, are you kidding me, Michelle, during a pandemic? Yes, it doesn't matter what environment you're in. Everything comes to you neutral. You have to decide the opportunities that are available to you and seek them out and allow them to work for you. So yes, even during a pandemic, as we're starting to see at the end, going into our second year, many businesses have started, many businesses have closed. But if you're looking at where the opportunities are, you'll take a year's worth of information and tally it and see where the opportunities lie for you. So we'll move to the next slide. So here we are. This is usually what you see when you talk to people about finances, especially when things are tight. No, I don't want to talk about money. I'm concerned about it at work. I'm at the end of my rope. Somebody please help me. And that's the knee-jerk reaction it tends to be. So if we want to take ourselves away from that knee-jerk reaction, then we should be looking at what are the things that we've learned over the last 12 months? Where are the opportunities? The given one is technology has reared its head. However, we want to move forward and start to say to ourselves, where can we actually start to take advantage and exploit these opportunities for our greatest good? And we've seen a lot of that coming from the area of entrepreneurship. There have been a number of people, which I'm so happy to see, who have bared down and started businesses. And those businesses have really given not just the person who's created it an opportunity, but also the community. So we'll go to the next slide. And this slide actually speaks a bit about literacy in the financial world. It's not something that somebody just gives to you. As I mentioned before, look, we've had 12 months worth of a pandemic. What data have we gotten? What have we extrapolated from that experience? So really what that means is really doing a deep dive and an analysis. So we can decide what's going to be the opportunities of the future, and knowing that we have to cultivate and water that knowledge. The knowledge is the thing that helps us to be able to have the empowerment. So right now we're just only looking at the data, looking at the opportunities, nurturing and gathering information. So let me give you an example of that. Once you have a knowledge, you can do what's shown on this next slide. So if you can see on this slide, it basically gives you a scenario, and that scenario seems pretty straightforward. But what it isn't is it doesn't give all the information. Most times when people are looking for employment, or either they're driving their own revenue through self-employment, they think of a number that they want to achieve. $1 million seems to be the number you hear most often. But sometimes $60,000. In this scenario, it says, if your client, in this particular case, were offering the following 2 jobs, which one should you take? So it looks like, obviously job number 1 looks like the favorable job instead of job number 2. But look at job number 1, $80,000 seems like a significant amount of money. It would suggest that job number 2 is the less operable job. But one thing is, what it says, consider the factors. If you haven't considered, are there any benefits in that job? Is the job employed or self-employed where you have opportunity for write-offs? Do you actually hit a certain tax bracket which causes you to pay back more to the government at the end of the day? And those are things that allow you to take that data that you actually gathered and put it into a critical analysis and to be able to assess. So I wanted to kind of give you the framework, because we always talk about, I don't want to just talk about employment or self-employment, because we have to address both, because some of us are in either camp or in fact both camps. And we need to be able to look at income from a very, very critical and dynamic way, especially during these times. So always consider your financial, not just your income dollar that you bring in, but consider taxes, consider your status, consider benefits that may be applicable. Those are all things that you really do need to look at when you're considering your own wealth. Now, if we are looking at generational wealth, which is the topic of today, how do these things that we're looking at really play out in our generational wealth? Well, of course, the more money you can keep, the more you can transfer to family members in different vehicles. And that's an important piece, because we're really trying to make as much money, usually not for us. We're making a lot of money so we can keep a quality of life for our family, but we're also raising money so that we can share with generations to come and make their lives a little bit easier. Let's move to the next slide. So one of the key things that I absolutely love these 2 doors. I'm in real estate, so I love everything real estate. And this is the key. Once you have knowledge and you gather data, and then you can actually come to making decisions more critically, that's where empowerment comes from. So people talk about financial literacy, empowerment. What's the difference between the two? Well, the literacy is the knowing, the looking at the data, the pulling it apart and assessing it and analyzing it, which allows you to make the difference between comparing apples to oranges and figuring out which one is better for you, which leads us to these doors. Neither of these doors are the preferred door. One might look better to one person, one might look better to the other in terms of where you choose to enter. But what it allows you to do is have empowerment to assess which door is the best door for me, which way is the best way to start building your financial wealth. And that could be through insurance, that could be through a number of vehicles. But the point of the matter is no one door is going to fit one family, one person in the same way, especially when you're trying to decide what is the amount of money that I'm saving for generations. So one of the things that I usually say to my kids is, I'm not working for myself. And in fact, I'm not even working for you. I'm working for your children. So whenever I think about the money that I'm making or whatever opportunities or partnerships I participate in, I'm always thinking, where does that go 2 generations from me? How does that help to support my family, my kids, my community 2 generations from me? So let's move to the next slide, because I think this is a good depiction of what you need to look at when you're talking about finances. So some people refer to a financial platform or pillars for finance. And one thing I'd like us to kind of look at in a fulsome way is when we're always looking at any kind of finance, we should always be looking at financial information and education. So sometimes we can't get education easily, or at least we think we can't. We're all at home at some point or another, more so than ever before. So getting financial knowledge should be easy, right? Well, not always. Sometimes it's easy to get, hard to understand or distill. So sometimes, as it refers to on the top blue box pillar, it says looking for counseling. So someone who can guide us. And those are a number of different people because their skill set may be different. You may be able to get financial knowledge from a lawyer. You may be able to get it from an insurance broker. You may be able to get it from a mortgage broker or a realtor. So there's different pieces and different people that you can go to distill that information. I'll look at the next box. Help accessing income boosting benefits and tax credits. That's a big one because the important thing is knowing what benefits are available for you. Now, more so now than ever before, there are more benefits and they're changing every day because of COVID. But going back in history, and one area that I'd like people to look at more importantly is tax credits. Tax credits are important, and this I would not leave to an amateur. In this particular case, that counseling I referred to, that expert, this is when you need them. When people have, for instance, illnesses, or they don't have mobility because they've been injured or in an accident, or maybe how we're born with that. There's opportunities for you to speak to a specialist in tax to help them, to have them help you look at what kind of disability tax benefits you could be taking advantage of that you may not know. Looking at benefits that can help boost your income is critical. These are all the hidden things that are not necessarily talked about by the CRA. So not just only paying attention to the current COVID benefits that are available, but what about the historic ones that you may have missed? So then we move to the next box, and it says safe and affordable financial products and services. So when we talk about safe and affordable, well, safe is, if anyone was in the market, safe is one of those things that you need to consider what your tolerance level is. And in that tolerance level piece, you need to look at your age. your time horizon. So how long do you have before you retire? What kind of things do you need to consider? Are you at the earlier stages of your life where you're actually starting to build your wealth? And again, we're looking at starting to invest early because that generational wealth starts with you at whatever age you're at. And then if, for instance, if you're starting at 25, you've got a long time horizon to be able to help not just yourself, but your children's children. Now, if you're a little bit older like myself and I've already passed that child rearing age, now I'm thinking about my children's children. So it's always a couple of generations ahead that you should be thinking about. And what kind of products should you be moving into? Ones, of course, that make sense, that have proven history. We've had recessions before. I think this is now my third one that I've been through. So we've always recovered. And one of the beautiful things that we're talking about today is real estate has always proven itself to be a viable option. Even with its ebbs and flows and ups and downs, it's still somewhere because we live in Canada, for the most of us, I think. And we do need to live somewhere, whether we're renting or whether we're buying. And we'll talk a bit more about that aspect of land. Okay, so then when we look at access savings and asset building opportunities, that's what we're going to talk about a little bit later, which is an alternative. We know about investing, we know about the stock market. We are starting to get ourselves acquainted with cryptocurrency. And then the last one, which we will highlight more, and this is kind of my transitional place to talk about tax liens. So right now in the market, of course, there are many changes going on. Some people, as I said, are gaining, some are losing, some are staying still. But one thing has always proven is there's going to be an opportunity to gain more wealth in real estate. Now you might be saying, Michelle, have you not been reading the news? Well, yes, I'm a part of part of that engagement in the news. And yes, there are houses selling for more, but what we want to look at is always buying things, my favorite word, on discount. So when we're looking at tax liens, let me give a description of what that really is. It's when someone who's a homeowner may not be able to afford their taxes anymore. Your bylaws will be able to articulate how long your government will allow someone not to pay their taxes before they start having a conversation and sending letters to them to say, you need to pay those taxes or we will be forced to put your property up for sale. You'll still have opportunity during that time to regain it back, but you'll have to pay everything up. And not everyone's able to do that. So again, that sounds pretty much like a pandemic, bad news story. Well, maybe bad news for one person, opportunity for another. So consumers now, awareness and protection, and that's a bit about the education piece. So that's the last little pillar that I refer to in these blue boxes. Consumers do need to have awareness. And I think the awareness and protection, especially in these days, when you're talking about generational wealth, is just making sure that you have protected what you've worked so hard for. Remember, I'm not working for my children or myself anymore. I'm working for my children's children. So that's a long time not to be around to know that what I've worked so hard for is protected. So I would like to look at things like insurances. I would like to look at things like making sure when I have money in an account, it's in the one that has maybe the most volatility or at least matches my personality. That's called knowing your client. And also making sure that I'm not doing transactions that might leave myself exposed to fraud. There was a very sad story of a woman who was just doing a transaction and purchasing a home, and she transferred $45,000 for her closing, and that wire transfer was intercepted, and unfortunately she lost that money. She still had to come up with her closing. So there's a whole area of protection, and I don't mean to frighten anyone, but I just want to bring your awareness to, you can work very hard at your generational wealth and not be successful if you don't take the appropriate protections or even know that you need to take appropriate protections. So I wanted to just move on from there and get into maybe a bit of the meat about what I want to talk about now. So we'll move to the next slide. So you see some really fancy people in front of you. And yes, that is myself and my good friend, Bev. As I mentioned before, Bev and I came into contact with each other about 5 to 7 years ago. We had a passion for financial education. We had our two different realms, of which we navigated in, and we had a meeting of the minds and coming together. So you will see a number of places. I mentioned Bev is a writer in her previous iteration, and buying property was one of her kind of side activities. So you'll notice that she's written in a number of magazines and newspapers on there. Although I also am a published writer, I didn't post them on here, but I do I guess the newer activities in that world. So podcasting for two of these groups that I've mentioned on here, and I belong to a number of associations. One being Women's Chamber of Commerce. And of course, thank you for mentioning, Jasmine. I actually received in 2020, yes, the year the world stood still, I managed to work very hard to receive recognition as the top 100 Black women in Canada in 2020 to watch out for. So in saying that, this is the part that belongs to Bev. So I'm here as Bev's not only partner, but spokesperson for this part of the journey. So we will start talking now about some samples. And again, please understand this is very fundamental and elementary in the respect that we just wanted to give and kind of tease you into knowing that there are ways of buying property outside of the traditional real estate, MLS, realtor environment. There are also opportunities to take advantage of property that is on discount. Sometimes that discount can mean just being out of the core, 5-6 hours away, where some of my clients have decided to sell here and buy there. But then there's other opportunities, which is tax liens, when somebody has not paid on their taxes. And then, of course, their bylaws state that they need to make good on those. And if not, then their local municipality has the right and opportunity to collect on the debt that is outstanding to them. So let's take a quick look. And again, at this point, just be careful. The slides seem to shifted. So I apologize, but I'll speak to it. Bear with me. So we'll go to the next slide. All right. So there's, as I mentioned before, so this is atypical where I am every morning. I go for a walk in the bush every single morning, and no, this is not close to my home. This is probably about 4 to 5 hours away from where I am in the east of the GTA. But it is very picturesque, especially as someone who likes the wilderness. Not all of you do, but don't worry, you don't have to live there. This is about you buying and holding and potentially selling as it is. Now, this particular picture does not have a structure on it, but that's okay. You have options of buying just land or just buying land that has a structure. Of course, as some of you know, if there's a structure, that's a better financing opportunity because then we can attach a mortgage to that purchase. Okay. So let's look at it this way. There are different ways to own real estate, as I mentioned before. There's a traditional way, which is the MLS. And we'll go to the next slide. So the MLS goes through a real estate agent, or as they like to be called, a realtor like myself, or a broker, or well, they've changed the names now because we've changed our governing act. So the name change, you'll see a bit of a discrepancy, but for the most part, people buy resale properties, but they also have other options of buying brand new construction, which I tend to gravitate to, and also alternative systems, which is the one we're talking about here, where real estate is from the local government. So in that case, it's not in the traditional system, the realtor does all the research and the work for you. In the second alternative system, you're going to do that work, okay? And if you're not comfortable doing that work, then that's why Bev and myself are here. We assist and do the research on the property. We find out all the details from the municipality, work with the government. Bev has had history and longstanding history buying property in Canada and the US. And I, as a realtor, I actually am certified as an international property specialist. So I'm familiar with a lot of different places, and I come from the realtor perspective. So putting our heads together, we make a very powerful team. So when you actually find a piece of property and you are interested in it, and we're assisting you in this, or you're doing it independently, there is a bidding process. So it's not just that the municipality says, well, we want our money and we'll take it from anyone. There is a bidding process that you have to go through. And that bidding process, you, just like actually traditional real estate, you don't know what other people are bidding. So you kind of have to know your homework and do your homework and understand what is going to be expected and how you can be successful. Just like a market now, there are winners and there are losers always. However, this is deeply discounted in most cases property. So we're not talking your 100,000, 500,000 over asking. And so you can also be done in the US and in Canada. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. And I'll move a little bit quickly just so everybody else can have their turn, but there is definitely a difference difference between tax liens and foreclosure. You'll hear foreclosure in the US. So foreclosures are sold by mortgage holders, right? That's directly from the bank. But in this particular case, the distinction is that these properties are sold actually by the government. As I mentioned before, from the tax collecting property aspect through as regulated by your bylaws through the municipality, which is an arm of the government. We'll go to the next slide. And then we look at this. So this is just a map of Canada, and it gives you an idea of how vast this opportunity is. There's 440 municipalities across Ontario. So there's a lot of area where you can actually see yourself becoming engaged. And within those 440, there's properties everywhere. So there's 200 in Manitoba and over 1,000 in Quebec. Next slide. So this slide, yeah, and actually, if we go back one slide, thank you. And then, so who buys this way? Well, first of all, as Bev said in her video, not a get rich quick. So those who have patience, those who are willing to either do the research or get the assistance to do the research, usually entrepreneurs and investors. I don't typically see first-time home buyers, but we are in a very, very ambitious world out there, and we are seeing more people who are very focused on their generational wealth. So you can see that there's an opportunity there to really put a lower amount of income revenue in and have more come out. So those who are wanting to earn extra income, and of course, those who want to increase their assets over a long-term approach with, of course, there's always going to be risk, but you mitigate your risk by working with people who know what they're doing, who have done this before, and of course, by being very clear on what your objective is. Next slide. So then another, I like the wilderness. These pictures are amazing for me. So what we have here is Bev's first property in Halliburton. So she got a cottage lot, and look at that. She bought it. I know some people were probably fainting right now, especially with real estate prices that they're seeing today. So they bought their property for $4,000, sold it for $15,000. Now, there's not always, the desire to sell, but I mean, look at the increase you've made in terms of increasing your wealth. This wealth can either be held for generations to come, meaning keeping the property, or you could just look at the increase that's been gained and start investing those in other vehicles that I've mentioned before, but we can go into in a longer, more specific investment type of vehicle product. Okay, next slide. So you saw this picture before. Oh, here it comes. Oh, there's one slide back. There we go. We've seen this picture before. And some of you who might be like me say, hey, that looks like the West Indies. Not exactly. No palm trees, but our Canadian version of it. So this is an example of another purchase that was made, 5.5 acres off the highway of Maddock. So there was a minimum bid that was required, $6,000. I'll use rough numbers if you don't mind. And then it sold for $15,000. So the assessed value of that land was $17,000. So even over the asking price for that minimum bid. So there's a huge gap if you are a numbers person. I mean, they're very, very direct and very expressed that there's an opportunity to really make good wealth. And there's an opportunity, if you keep doing this, that you have a low risk because the dollar value is low. So at least you can, even if, for instance, you didn't sell for as much, you still will make a modest revenue increase and can put that towards generation and actually differentiate a portfolio. This is a nice way to do that. So next slide. So this one here, I talked before about having a structure on the property. This one is enthralled, and it was bought by a realtor investor who came to our approach of buying tax liens and needed some support. You might be thinking, well, why would a realtor need support? Well, this is an investment. This is a job. Just like you have an investment account manager, you would have a property land investment manager or property manager who can assist you with things like this. You may not want to do it if you're out there selling your own houses for your own business. But this one was 11 acres, so huge, in Hastings to the right, not as picturesque as the first one. So you might want to take walks down this area because it's not paved, but definitely this is a McDonald mind. So you might have thought before, oh, I can just buy land or I'll buy a structure on a land. And I say structure because it may not be a house, it may be a shed, it may not be habitable. But this one is an actual mine. A mine? Yes, a mine. So a mine with 11 acres north of Bancroft, and it was sold back in 2016, somewhere around 2016, 17. So the diversity in the types of land you can buy under tax liens is not just the scenario I gave before. It could be someone else who has actually purchased land who has decided that they don't want to hold on to it or they can't hold on to it. So it could be a sale or a forced sale. So we'll go to the next slide and you're going to see Bev in her glory. And this is Bev. She's at the mind, and this is probably the most, it's nice to actually see her engaged in this particular site. So she sold that property and had an amazing time doing so. So I'm going to jump to the next one because I don't want to take too long. So I'm going to do the takeaways from this is that there's affordable opportunities in real estate. You can develop your own, Bev has developed her own system and it's enhanced her retirement, which is what you want. So you could be buying to hold, to invest, to sell for yourself for generations. But since we're talking about generational wealth, instead of holding it for yourself, we're actually doing this for our children and our children's children. And the good note is if your children want to invest, remember, you saw the investment amounts, $6,000, very low to get started. So it's not a barrier to entry. So for anyone who has interest, you can, as I mentioned before, do it yourself, go solo. That's a lot of work, but you might want to actually be taught by someone who's done it, someone who knows the process, understands how to do the paperwork, knows where the municipalities, has familiarity with them, and of course, can let you have some insights as to where the bigger risks and pitfalls and where the wins are. Next slide. Sorry, and we'll go to the next one, please. Something seems to be duplicated. That's okay. We're going to skip through that one. We'll go to the next one. So Bev sold this land in contract in 2020. So most recently, this is a good thing to show you, because you might say, oh, you sold something in 2016. That was back then. It wasn't now. What's happening in the current market? It still happens. Actually, we're poised to see much more of this, to be honest. So let's go to the next slide. So these are examples of winning bids. I won't go over too much of it because it's pretty explanatory. It's more so to look at those diversity and structures. And the next slide. And this is just an aerial view and a map, which if you click one more time, that should come up, Jasmine. There we go. And this one just actually shows, again, some old sales that happened in 2013. And I'll go to the next slide. And this is another picturesque one. This is in the municipality of Dutton and Dewich. And this was a minimum tender of 6,000. Again, I'm using rough numbers, and it was just vacant land, so no structure, and assessed at 38,000. So you can see the uptake and the opportunity. It was locked land, but there's also vacant land southwest in Iona. And we'll go to the next one. So currently Bev is working on some sales. This is one of hers at Gore Bay. It's residential. The arrows on the bottom are just because it probably came through a MLS type system. There's a structure behind those trees. You can't see it right now. Not sure if it's pretty or not, but that doesn't matter. What is pretty is the amount of money that can be made with a low investment for anyone, even if you partnered, because I'm about how do we get it done, right? So we'll go to the next one. And this one, okay, right off the, so things you consider, right off the road, access. I see that there's some structures in the back, again, open land. Not all have land on them. Some will have land, some won't. Again, you saw one that was a mine. This is just a different one. And we'll go to the next one and we're almost done. So I want to just highlight the possible risks. I mean, we all know that there's risk in life. There's no way to avert risk. We would love to, but we've been faced with a pandemic. So now everyone knows. But there are a few provinces that allow existing owner redemption, right? So that means, I told you before, bylaws lay out the rules, and municipalities may give you an opportunity to purchase your land back, but then you get your money back with a small interest. So if I went and purchased someone's tax lien, I would actually, and they paid out their debt, I may have to redeem it, and I would get my money back that I purchased it for, with a bit of interest back. So there's no type of guarantees, of course, meaning you go and bid, you're not guaranteed to win, but of course you get your money back. Your money always stays with you until there's a clean transaction. And then there's large cities that have more competition, of course, in Toronto versus rural country, that sort of thing. And of course, you have to do your due diligence, which I spoke about before. Okay. Then possible rewards. Of course, I mentioned before, you may have a diversified portfolio. You can acquire real estate, even retail real estate, low entry to barrier to entry, sorry. And of course, increasing your financial wealth, not just for yourself in beefing up potential retirement, but you may be able to assist with your children or your children's children. And that's a great way to have assets, and a great way for even young people to invest in the real estate market. And lastly, I just wanted to show you the last side, which is, of course, a younger Bev and her book, not the one that she's working about, the one that she's had published. So I want to thank you so much for allowing me to speak on behalf of Bev and share some of the insights and give you just a taste, just a little taste of what the possibilities are for real estate for you. And not have to fight within the resale market or traditional real estate, which at the moment right now might be challenging for some. Thank you so much. Take care.
I've been muted. Okay, now I'm good. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, so I will open the floor to our attendees. If you have any questions for Michelle, please feel free to send them in the chat or the Q&A area. And hopefully we can generate a discussion because this is such an exciting topic. It opens a possibility again for generational wealth, which of course is huge and so important in our community, to leave a legacy behind for our children and our children's children, as you so eloquently explained. So yes, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in. And we do actually have one. Okay, where can you find listings of these properties? I guess in properties in general. What would be the best place to find them? Michelle, are you aware?
Sorry, if you can repeat the question.
Sure. So where can you find listings of available properties?
Okay. So
The
remember
tax
the
lien
slide that
ones. I'm sorry.
yes, tax lien, tax liens. Thank you for differentiating. So as I mentioned on one of the slides, there are 440 municipalities in Canada. And then I did break out ones in Manitoba and Quebec. I think Quebec had over 1,000. So your municipalities, however, they don't want you to find it that easily. Some, hide them behind doors and down valleys. But when you had experience and you have a history and experience, you can actually find where they're listed. And that's why Bev and I work with clients to be able to assist them to find and locate them. Some will post on their websites, but not all are that upfront.
Excellent, thank you. We do have another question. In the beginning, you mentioned how can we use a crisis like COVID to build wealth? Are there any suggestions or tips that you're able to share with our audience?
Certainly. I think being a Virgo by nature, I tend to observe quite a bit. So what I've noticed over the time with COVID is what businesses have been successful. So every time we have a lockdown, what's able to stand up? So what I noticed was if I had a retail store, when we opened the first time, I would start stocking sanitizer because that in itself would allow me to stay open. What I've noticed with successful restaurants versus not successful restaurants is being able to expedite their back of the house. So I worked for a culinary organization in HR. And so the expediting, how do you process food without having it to go out your front door, meaning people are sitting on the front of the house. So if you can find a way to expedite and get people to order and pick up, so that would mean collecting information on your clients, people who patron you. So if you go into another lockdown, you know that you can actually call them and say, hey, are you feeling like having dinner today that, we can prepare for you? So being proactive. Technology is a given, an easy given. So those who are afraid of technology, COVID has not been nice to you. But what has been very good is education online. So if you have a skill that you never thought was really something someone would be interested in. So myself, I garden a lot and no one was interested in gardening, but now everyone is. So I've been able to teach people the important things to grow, not just tomatoes and lettuce, but things that have medicinal properties to help you to heal, to help you to fight off colds, to build your immune system and grow those things. Hopefully that was enough.
Yes. Just to kind of piggyback off of this question, I know personally investing is something that I was interested in prior to COVID, but then COVID happened and the market crashed and I panicked and I backed out. So I'm sure that there are a lot of people who might be interested in investing and setting up some kind of system in which generational wealth could begin to occur, but they are afraid to do so because of the state of the market. So do you have any advice or tips or reassuring words for them?
Yeah. I would say this. So thank you very much for your question. It's an awesome question, actually. So I'm not suggesting I have balls of steel. I don't. But I do recognize investment. So I'm not suggesting that you go and find a stranger because, that could be risky. We talked about risk, but you might have a close family member that maybe they have 3,000 and you have 3,000 and you can partner together because the goal is to support children collectively in a family, like joining together in partnership. Phenomenal opportunities for investing in that way.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry, I do notice a question in the Q&A section. So would you recommend paying cash for properties or seeking a loan to do so?
Well, it depends. My answers are always it depends, because when you're taking a loan, you have to consider your interest rates, how long you're going to hold on to that loan versus how much money your money can make for you currently. Now, when I say your money making for you currently, you might say, but Michelle, the markets suck right now. Well, I say I've been a private investor, and being a private investor, that was doing much better than the banks were doing. So I never say to anyone, walk into anything just on a handshake and a kind word. You always have to have legal documents that have penalties. Know that you can actually collect money back from people if you decide to be an investor for someone or a loans officer in essence. But there are opportunities for you to, you have to do that critical assessment that I showed before. I think it was slide 3, where you looked at the job and which job looked better. Well, on the face of it, the first job looked like the best job, but we had to consider the benefits, the tax bracket we've just put ourselves into. So at the same token, think about the interest rate that you could be gaining on your money versus what you're paying out on your money, and how long will either of those be the case.
Excellent. So I guess it all just depends on those factors as well. So we have another question. Is it beneficial to hold land for longer than 1 year? Maybe you want to pass down the land to future members or future generations. So would that be beneficial to hold on to the land for longer than a year?
So it is truly your comfort level. And I will tell you that there are many people right now that are doing collective land purchasing with the intention of becoming having co-owned communities. That has reared its head. I mean, it's always been there, but COVID has, made people think more about it. So you have to think about if you want to hold it and keep it for your family members as they grow, if they're ever even going to be interested. As an example, right now, my family has land abroad, but I can't travel right now, and I'm not planning to live there, so they might as well sell it. If you've got someone who's interested, you're not going to have something in Alaska and hope that your children's children are interested in living in Alaska. That's a far stretch. You might want to get rid of it after a year if you can find a buyer, right? So that's a part of you're not selling based on the back end, you're picking based on the sell. If it's viable at the sell, okay?
Okay. And for first-time home buyers, does it make sense to invest in a land property or to build a deposit for your home?
Well, is the question I would ask is, in what area, like, what is the amount you're going to be spending on that home? Because the deposit will be significant if you're looking in Toronto right now. So you would have to ask yourself the question, where am I going to live, first of all, for your actual residence? If it's Toronto, then you're going to be saving up for a long time with the market the way it is now. So you could actually, in a short period of time, like, okay, so let me just use raw numbers. I think some young people, when COVID happened and they all didn't get their summer jobs, I think they made about $5,000 roughly. They could have taken that money and invested in a piece of land as like a 16-year-old, as a 17-year-old, as an 18-year-old. So that also, you could do that and still save money for, you know, eventually your home, your forever home, as they say. So you do need someone to assist you with strategy.
And for young people who are interested in investing, I guess, what would be your, I guess, wisdom, pearl of wisdom that you would give them in this case?
Okay, so it's about how you get to the investing. I've always been a firm believer that people should be employed and self-employed at the same time to reap the benefits of both. It's a different market, but there are a lot of jobs out there. So I will say that. And the reason I say that is because when you are self-employed, you want to have write-offs. And when you are employed, you want to take the advantage of learning, first of all, that skill wherever you're employed. So you learn from your employer, but at the same time, you're also building your credit, which looks good when you need to get a loan for your business. So again, I, as you know, I wore a hat as a financial planner. So my mind is always thinking on how do the two worlds balance each other out. So to answer your question as a young person, how do you build generational wealth? A little at a time. There's not going to be a slam dunk that, you know, you just put a little, you know, there are novelty slam dunks that happen in cryptocurrency. Okay, if you got in like the very beginning, right? But that doesn't always happen. So if that didn't happen for you, there's other ways of doing it. And again, remember I said, I pay attention to what happened all of last year. There are little nuggets and little things that survived and things that I would say, hey, that business did well. Consistently, every lockdown, it did well. Okay, that might be a place that I either want to create a business or invest in that world.
Excellent. And I guess for younger people who are starting to build credit, I guess, what would be the first step for them?
So the first thing you should do, if you're working right now, let your bank know that you're working because they don't know. So if you don't have a bank account, that would be the first thing. Establish a bank account, let them know you're working somewhere. So that they can actually create a credit bureau for you and show that you are working. As well, as soon as you're able to, get a credit card. Now, don't be crazy with it. If you have $100 and you got to buy a pair of boots, use the credit card, buy the boots. When you go home, take the $100, put it back on the credit card. You have to be disciplined. Your goal with the credit card is to establish credit. If you're going to school, use a credit card to buy your books and take the money you have that we're going to pay for the books and pay the credit card back. You have to be very focused with that. And that's how you establish credit. Then if you have a really good job, like my son got a job working at Amazon full-time for 6 months. So as soon as he got that job, he told the bank, hey, I work full-time. This is how much money I make. They saw it coming in his account. Now it's tagged on his credit bureau. So if he quits in 6 months, nobody's coming to ask him, are you still working there? Did you quit? But at least he's established.
Excellent. Thank you. I do not see any questions or comments at this time, so I will just close by asking if you have any further suggestions or recommendations for further research. If people would like to look into resources to learn more about this topic, what would you recommend to them?
I would recommend that you reach out to myself. I think on the opening remarks, I had my hashtag for Instagram, which I don't post most, but at TTG group. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Michelle Leong Francis, all the social medias, I'm there, definitely. And I'm more than happy to share, to let you guys, to support anyone who has interest. Even sometimes it's the simplest of questions, and I'm very open to doing that because my goal right now is there's huge opportunity for us to advance financially despite the world around us. But I thank you so much for listening. I thank you so much for your questions, and I wish you all well.
Excellent. And thank you very much again, Michelle. Is there a contact information for Beverly if people would like to get in contact with her as well?
I think it is on her, I don't have it at hand, but I think Nicole will be able to share that out with the attendees.
Excellent. All right. So I guess I'll close again. Thank you, Michelle, very much. And thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate you coming out tonight to learn more about Kujenga and learn more about building generational wealth and financial literacy. I did post the link for Kujenga's website in the link in the comment section earlier, but I will do it once more. It's kujengafamily.org. And you can visit this website if you'd like to learn more about Kujenga's upcoming initiatives and events that we have going on. We hope that you enjoy your long weekends and that you take care. So thanks again and have a good night, everyone.